Well, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our presenter for today, David Widawsky. He is the Acting Director of the Economics, Exposure, and Technology Division at U.S. EPA in the Office of Chemical Safety and Pollution Prevention. His office is over a lot of the offices, other divisions with which we're familiar and from whom we've had speakers in the past, such as the Design for the Environment. The Economics, Exposure, and Technology Division provides a wide range of support for EPA's mission focus on chemical safety and sustainability. And the environmental statutes that this office implements are the Toxic Substances Control Act and the Pollution Prevention Act. So David has been doing a lot of work in promoting green chemistry within EPA and in different offices and in building partnerships. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce him and turn the presentation over to him.
Thank you very much, Lynn. It's a great pleasure to have the opportunity to speak today with the folks that are participating in the Great Lakes Green Chemistry Network. As Lynn says, I mentioned I'm the Acting Director of the Economics, Exposure, and Technology Division. We're the home of the Design for the Environment program. Some of you, many of you may be familiar with, and some of you may have heard a recent webinar through this network. We also, as many of you may also know, is the EPA home of the Presidential Green Chemistry Challenge Awards that we celebrated our 17th year this year, and we work very closely with the American Chemical Society in administering that award program. What I want to talk about today is some of the work that we're trying to do to rededicate ourselves to taking the core, looking at the core innovations, the technology innovations associated with green chemistry that we've been recognizing for a number of years that we work with in our programs at EPA. And the rededication I'm talking about is trying to identify and support ways to amplify and leverage what I call the imperative green chemistry. How do we take it out of the lab? How do we, as a federal agency, but also part of the federal family of a number of other agencies, help facilitate the deployment or the movement of that important environmental innovation into the marketplace, so that we can actually help realize and maybe accelerate the realization of the benefit, the environmental benefits, and in many cases the economic benefits of the green chemistry innovations. So what we've been working, as a kind of general overview, what I've been trying to do in working with the leadership and the staff here in the Office of Pollution Prevention Toxics is to expand the playing field around green chemistry. We've been doing, and this kind of lays out where a lot of my efforts have been going on in the last year to build the networks and build the relationships so that we can leverage our EPA assets, and some of them, and I'll talk about those in a little bit, the assets that we have in EPA in research and development and partnering with our regional offices, with our existing and potential partners at the state and at the local government level. I mentioned that we are one agency among a number in the federal family that has a stake or could have a stake in green chemistry, and so identifying some of those areas where the amplification leveraging opportunities may depend on or go hand in hand with some other existing federal programs is something that I want to highlight, because I think it represents a great opportunity both for people in EPA, but also for those partners who may have access to or may be interested in seeing where they can tap in to more of the assets and assistance programs that exist. And lastly, there's initiatives going at the state, local, and private sector level that may or may not require leveraging of EPA assets, but where, in order to fulfill our mandate to protect human health and the environment, we can support, cheerlead, connect, act as a facilitator on some of those initiatives. And so that kind of, those describe kind of broadly what I'm going to be talking about for the rest of this webinar, and how we're trying to expand the playing field for green chemistry and green chemistry innovation. I want to take just a moment. There are a lot of definitions, a lot of different people, I should say, honor people use different definitions of green chemistry, and without trying to impose a semantic framework on anybody or any organization, I just wanted to very quickly put up on the slides the one definition that I find to be very useful in our work. And looking at that sentence, there's a research and development side that we work a lot on, and finding ways to engage and leverage the implementation part, I think, is an important element of this definition of green chemistry. And when we think about chemical manufacturing, and sometimes as importantly, is looking at innovations on how chemicals are used and understanding the chemical engineering processes that allow us to reduce or eliminate the use or generation of hazardous substances. So when I think about, and we think about this definition of our green chemistry objectives, we can see some of the areas that we focused on that provide that farm team, if you will, of innovations for the work that we're doing to amplify and leverage. There are elements of chemical product design and development. There are for the designing or redesigning existing chemical products. There's a manufacturing and processing element that I just mentioned, and that there's a lot of interesting opportunities that we've seen through our Presidential Green Chemistry Challenge Awards. But as we look at the initiatives and the efforts that are being put into advanced manufacturing, we see a lot of opportunities for green chemistry in the manufacturing and processing world. And then leveraging that through supply chains, both through the chemical supply chain, but also the manufacturing supply chain. And I'll speak more about that in a few slides. But I just wanted to kind of lay out both the scope of the type of work we're trying to do, what that playing field looks like, and then where we start to engage or start to be active within that playing field. So I mentioned earlier in one of the earlier slides about when I was talking about leveraging EPA's assets. What does that mean to me, and how am I using that term? So there are programs recognition programs that we run. There's partnering programs that we run. There's R&D activities that we do. And I just wanted to take a moment to illustrate the type of activities and engagements that EPA is working on in the green chemistry space. It goes beyond our Presidential Green Chemistry Challenge Awards. So we've got, within that award program, I consider that sometimes to be one of my farm teams, or one of our farm teams of and assets for innovation. In the award program, we've had more than 700 innovations that have been nominated. We've made upwards of 80 awards to these very impressive green chemistry innovations across a number of categories, and you may be familiar with those. In addition, I mentioned earlier, and Lynn mentioned, our Design for the Environment program. Our Alternatives Assessment program looks at for particular chemicals or sets of chemicals in particular uses, what range of alternatives might be available for a particular chemical use combination, and try to characterize the hazard profile associated with those. And in cases where we're seeing hazard profiles of potential alternatives that don't include a alternative that has a toxicity or hazard profile in the range that we'd like to see as we manage chemical safety, it provides an opportunity for signaling where green chemistry innovation could play an important role in our chemical safety program. We've also got the Design for the Environment Safer Product Labeling program that includes almost 3,000 chemical formulated products and more than 500 industry partners. And so we look at our second farm team, so to speak, in our program, where there are companies that are engaged and committed to investing in chemical safety and greener chemicals. That's another area where we could, and a set of potential partners, where we could be looking at expanding that playing field for green chemistry. In our pollution prevention division, as Lynn said, we've got the Toxic Substance Control Act as one of our authorizing statutes. The second authorizing statute is our Pollution Prevention Act. And in our pollution prevention division within our office, they are our lead office in EPA for a 6-federal agency partnership called Energy, Economy, and Environment, which is focusing on deploying sustainable and sustainability innovations in the manufacturing sectors, focusing primarily on small and medium-sized entities, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. When we think about manufacturing innovation, that's a huge opportunity for us to leverage that partnership to introduce and amplify green chemistry within the manufacturing environment. And that's coupled with the Green Suppliers Network, which is also managed out of our Pollution Prevention Division. Some of you may be working with other of our EPA program offices. Our Office of Research and Development has an extensive research program, provides both research within EPA, but also through cooperative research and development agreements, and through our extensive grant program, focus areas on green chemistry in a number of different ways. And as Lynn said, our former our recent assistant administrator at EAPA for the Office of Research and Development, Paul Anastas, was a longtime participant and leader in the green chemistry field. But it's not just about research and development. It's not just about my office and Office of Research and Development. We've been trying to work more, engage more actively with our Office of Water, with our Office of Air and Radiation, with our Office of Solid Waste and Emergency Response to identify areas and programmatic imperatives where green chemistry can provide a solution and a pollution prevention and upstream pollution reduction opportunity in things like replacements for chemicals that are associated with hazardous air pollutants or air quality, water filtration, water treatment, or replacements for chemicals that necessitate those kind of treatment activities. And so there's a lot of overlap that we're trying to facilitate within EPA in identifying how green chemistry can be a solution for our broader set of environmental mandates and imperatives. And last, within EPA, we've got, as many of you may know, we have 10 regional offices around the country, and we have a set of labs. And our regional offices are engaging with stakeholders in the manufacturing sector, in the research and development arenas throughout the country. And we're seeing opportunities through those farm teams that I mentioned, our Green Chemistry Award nominees and awardees, our Safer Product Labeling Program, and our program offices to broaden the playing field for leveraging green chemistry innovation into the marketplace. And we are strongly encouraging and trying to support our regional offices in reaching out to networks like the Great Lakes Green Chemistry Network, in other regional networks and other state initiatives to help provide insight and access to the assets that we've got at EPA. Just very quickly, we've got, I mentioned the grant program, the general grant programs in the Office of Research and Development at EPA. We also, our Office of Research and Development also administers our Small Business Innovation Research Program that has included green chemistry as a focal area in the past. We are working more actively on supporting U.S. export efforts, particularly around environmental exports. And as we see the broadening the playing field and implementing green chemistry in supply chains, the export markets sometimes become a very important element of the business model or the business case for green chemistry. We've got programs throughout the agency, partnership programs that afford opportunities for leveraging green chemistry. I just mentioned one of those in our Office of Air, the AgStar program that focuses on methane production and capture from animal waste and ways to reform that methane, turn it into other kinds of products. There's some very interesting green chemistry innovations for making good and better use of the carbon and other materials that are embodied in waste products. We have, this last year at the agency, consolidated some of our strategies around environmental technologies into a technology innovation roadmap that's been incorporated into EPA's strategic plan. So it becomes a guiding document for how we take a more holistic or portfolio approach to the continuum of research, development, and deployment. And lastly, one area that I just want to mention is that EPA, primarily currently through our Office of Research and Development, but other program offices at EPA are also starting to develop challenge prizes through authority that has, in the America Competes Act that was passed in January of last year, gives us affords us through legislation some additional ways to partner with external entities and other federal agencies to promote technology innovation or other kinds of innovation through challenge prizes. And that's an area where I've been talking with our regional offices and other program offices to develop and implement green chemistry leverage and amplification projects. Clinton, I lost my ability to move down my slides. Here we go. This next slide is the research, development, and deployment continuum that some of you may have seen in a publications that EPA put out in the mid-2000s, trying to help explain and articulate what EPA strategies around environmental technology, going from the left side of the slide, from that upstream research proof of concept activities through the technology development, demonstration, verification, and validation of the technologies and out into the commercialization, diffusion, and utilization area. We work across this continuum, but one of the things that the reason I put up this slide is that, and at the bottom I identify some of those areas where we work specifically, is that the pattern at EPA has been for individual groups or organizations within the agency to focus on different parts of the research, development, and diffusion continuum. And one of the things that we're trying to do in my office with the leadership and the staff in our program is to serve as a point of contact so that where there are opportunities or needs for, say, technology demonstration, or there are a need or opportunity around commercialization or utilization in the supply chain, that we provide, and, if you will, a one-stop shop for external stakeholders to be able to access the different assets within EPA across the research, development, and deployment continuum, where the focus is going to be on green chemistry and engineering. And so we want that it's not always a simple continuum. It's not always something that is seamless, but we're trying to fill in those individual gaps to make it easier for our partners to be able to engage with and partner with EPA in the area of green chemistry. So I mentioned some of the other federal agencies that we can and do work with. I just wanted to run through a few of those to give folks an idea and insight into some of where we see the opportunities, and if it resonates with any of you or people or organizations that you work with, it certainly could be would be a topic that I'd like to pursue with folks who are interested in talking more about it. I mention the economic opportunities a lot when I'm talking and working with people on green chemistry. I think that we're seeing in the space of environmental technologies that our administrator, and I can't quote her exactly, and I apologize for that, but she talks about the importance of exploding the fallacy that economic development and environmental protection are at competing odds. And in fact, in many cases, particularly in pollution prevention and green chemistry, is a great example of that. With environmental opportunity comes economic opportunity. So we're working with the Department of Commerce in their Economic Development Administration that works with nonprofits and local governments around the country. The International Trade Administration, I mentioned our work and our increasing focus on environmental exports. There's an Environmental Exports Trade Advisory Committee within the International Trade Administration and the Department of Commerce. They have an International Buyers Program where they bring institutional buyers to the U.S. And at particular trade shows and identifying products and supply chains and suppliers that can support those needs. green chemistry and green chemical products are land squarely within that program. And then the other two are some programs that the Department of Commerce runs for taking American exporters out to other countries and trying to help promote those environmental exports. Working with the Department of Energy, we have a long history of working with the Office of Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, their biomass program. A number of the technologies that we have recognized with Presidential Green Chemistry Challenge Awards are on the conversion of biomass into fuels, into in some cases chemical intermediates, in some cases products like bio-based plastics, in some cases catalytic processes for recycling either bio-based or other kinds of plastics. And so the biomass program, there's a lot of overlap with what we do in the Department of Energy. In the U.S. Department of Agriculture, agricultural research, there's the Economic Research Service, there's the Office of Rural Development that has a number of economic development programs that they are kind of the mirror of the Department of Commerce, but for the rural businesses. And they've got the bio-based program, the bio-preferred program. They've got a number of different technology and entrepreneurship programs focusing on bio-based programs. And again, we see a number of green chemistry innovations in bio-based manufacturing products, chemical engineering. And lastly, there's I just thought I'd mention that something that I consider to be one of the best kept secrets in the federal family is that the U.S. Export-Import Bank, EXIM, is an organization of the federal government that provides various kinds of financing instruments for U.S. exporters, and they've got an entire program focusing on environmental exports, the goods and services, and how they can support the companies and exporters in that area. Now, when we talk about the imperative of green, amplifying and leveraging green chemistry, part of that, no small part of that, when I just as I mentioned, is the economic story. What is the business case for green chemistry? And so many of you may be familiar with, some of you have seen the slide, but I find it useful sometimes just to reintroduce it to help set that stage. That green chemistry affords us opportunity to reduce costs in manufacturing and materials handling through energy savings, water savings, the things like reducing the cost of handling hazardous waste by eliminating that waste in the first place. There are opportunities for new products and new performance characteristics of existing products. I talked about that a little bit with the bio-based or the biomass program, Department of Energy. And in a number of cases, an increasing number cases of importance, is identifying green chemistry innovation as a route or a vehicle for transforming a waste into an asset. So when we look at animal waste, we look at plastic waste, we look at landfill waste, where green chemistry can afford us an opportunity through sustainable materials management to transform that material into something that extends the life of those molecules and atoms in a way that doesn't present hazard, exposure, or risk to people or the environment. That's a very powerful, not only environmental opportunity, but an economic opportunity for entities that are engaged in those activities. I think one of the areas that I focus on when we talk about the business case for green chemistry is leveraging demand. I mentioned earlier, and I'll talk a little bit more in just a couple of slides, about the importance of supply chains and how signals for sustainable materials and sustainable processing, either through for purposes of cost savings for new products or transforming liabilities into assets. So supply chains become very important in understanding how the supply chains work and how those economic signals get sent through, help us understand where those economic opportunities for green chemistry may lie. In public procurement, we're working with the General Services Administration, we're working with other federal agencies in trying to identify types of procurement activities and products that engender the kind of environmental performance that we expect to see in that's partly manifested in an executive order 13514 for sustainable purchasing at the federal level, but we also see that as an opportunity to help catalyze the markets for those goods and services. And the next bullet, when I talk about the needing to innovate at the speed of business, I think one of the things that we hear continually, and those of us who work, and those of you who are working with businesses that are focused on investing in green chemistry, is that innovation has to happen. Those partnerships and those supply chains have to reflect the imperatives and the opportunities at the speed of business. We do a lot of things at different speeds in some cases, and there's certain things you can't rush. Certain kinds of basic research, science, and research and development. The innovation proceeds, as quickly as the innovators and entrepreneurs figure out ways to create those innovations. But once those innovations are manifest, finding ways to accelerate the speed that the signals from supply chains are articulated throughout the supply chain that help create that effective demand, and facilitating those signals then to the existing American chemical industry and potentially the American chemical industry of the future is something that may not be a direct responsibility within the mandate of the EPA, but in order to realize the environmental benefits and the economic opportunities, we need to be working with partners to figure out how we can operate and operate with our partners at the speed of business. So I just wanted to provide, in the last few slides, some examples of how we are working with, and we're seeing some of those opportunities that I mentioned to work with federal agencies, to work with some private sector entities, to perhaps seed the conversation for in the question and answer session. I apologize for the sirens. My office overlooks Constitution Avenue in Washington, D.C., and we always get some kind of excitement on Constitution Avenue. So the first one I wanted to mention is something that I had a slide up earlier on, and I mentioned the 6 federal agencies. My slide doesn't include the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which is the 6th agency, focusing on economy, energy, environment. The 6 agencies, Department of Commerce, Department of Energy, EPA, Department of Labor, Small Business Administration, and USDA, are working with communities and manufacturing centers around the country to conduct what we call a sustainability tune-ups for small, medium-sized manufacturers, looking at the ways to reduce energy use, reduce water use, but also looking at ways to promote chemical safety. And the whole purpose of this is try to help promote the competitiveness of those companies through environmental performance. And each one of those other agencies have a specific area of competence within that, but we're all committed to working with those small, medium-sized companies. And in some cases, we're also complementing that with work with large entities and large facilities to introduce sustainability into their manufacturing. But as I mentioned, there is in the green chemistry and the green chemical engineering arena, there's a lot of opportunity that we haven't tapped, and we're looking at ways to develop the partnerships that could support the expertise and the consulting services that might be needed to support those E3 kind of activities. Now, one of our main partners, I mentioned the Department of Commerce in our E3 program, is the Manufacturing Extension Partnership that is run out of the National Institute for Standards and Technology. They're all over the country. This is one of the maps that I borrowed from one of my friends in the MEP program. They've got centers, they've got service locations around the country. They have a commitment, we have an interagency agreement with them to promote and support sustainable manufacturing. One of the areas that we find is with all those service centers, with all the different kind of services that they have, that they're providing to their clients around the country, each one of those service centers can't be an expert in every aspect of manufacturing. So what they do is they rely on networks of experts and consultants to support their client engagements on particular areas of manufacturing. One of the things that we're starting to work on with the American Chemical Society and some of our other regional network partners is trying to identify or encourage experts in green chemistry and green engineering to self-identify so that we can start to develop a network of experts that can engage with or interested in engaging in those consulting activities with the businesses where green chemistry and chemical engineering could be part of the business solution for the small, medium-sized manufacturers. I also mentioned the Economic Development Administration in the Department of Commerce. One of the, they have in the last few years have been dedicated to supporting regional innovation clusters. They have one program called the Jobs and Innovation Accelerator Challenge Program that provided 20 regional innovation grants. The I6 Green program, which we partnered with Economic Development Administration on, was focusing on supporting regional innovation clusters around commercialization of green technology. And the Michigan cluster focused, that was led out of Michigan State University, specifically is focusing on green chemistry commercialization as an economic development opportunity. But there are other of these regional innovation clusters that have received funding from the Department of Commerce, that have received funding from the Department of Labor, from the Small Business Administration, from the Department of Agriculture. We developed this syndicated model for supporting these regional innovation clusters. There's a number where of these clusters where green chemistry can be an important part of the commercialization and the economic development activities. So there's a set of potential partners, depending on where you are, the organizations you work with, to partner with some of these regional innovation clusters to introduce green chemistry as a solution to that. I mentioned in upstate New York, there's a food manufacturing cluster, and there's a lot of, as we mentioned in the AgStar program, there's a lot of waste to energy opportunities. There's a lot of green chemistry leverage opportunities within the food manufacturing. And one can go to the Economic Development Administration website. We'd be happy to talk to folks if they're interested in working with us and EPA's regional offices in connecting with one or more of those regional innovation clusters around green chemistry. I mentioned the U.S. Export-Import Bank. I'm not going to go through this slide in detail. You can get it when Cliff sends it or makes it available later. But I think when we look at the mission to, particularly for the Environmental Exports Program, for focusing on renewable energy and environmental exports across a broader range of goods and services, they have specific goals and they have specific financial products that in some cases can provide that tipping point for companies that want to and are able to identify goods and services that incorporate or engender green chemistry and are looking to expand their markets so that they can develop a stronger business model for green chemistry. So very and a very dedicated and talented group of staff at the U.S. Export-Import Bank. At the state and local level, I mean, many of you, we've got at this regional level, the Great Lakes Green Chemistry Network is a great example of that. A number of states have initiatives focusing on green chemistry, developing business and economic opportunities around green chemistry. More and more it's being built into or developed at the same time with economic development activities through the regional clusters that I mentioned. Building sustainable manufacturing, green chemistry into the comprehensive economic development strategies at the local level through business clusters, through incubators, through other kinds of economic development initiatives, helps those localities access the funding that's available through the Economic Development Administration. And so until recently, I wasn't familiar with how powerful these CEDSs, the CEDs are, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategies, and the role that they play in providing funding opportunities through the Department of Commerce, and be happy to talk to folks more about that. But when we see the leverage and amplification opportunities through economic development, that becomes one of those leverage points that becomes very important. I talked about the MEPs, the Manufacturing Expansion Program offices. Small Business Administration runs the small business development centers that are supporting the E3 and other kinds of sustainable manufacturing initiatives, and trying to identify, as I mentioned, this network of green chemistry and green engineering experts to connect with, to support, to self-identify, and to make the small business development centers aware of where these green chemistry assets may lie, is where we rely on our regional offices and networks to help us to help in that amplification and leverage opportunity. And then there's a number of technology transfer and entrepreneurship programs also at the state level. Some that are supported by the federal government, like the National Science Foundation, through the I-Corps, the Innovation Corps, become other important vehicles for reaching out to the local level through technology and entrepreneurship, for which green chemistry is a great vehicle and a great target. I mentioned the private sector, some of our partnerships, and I mentioned earlier also a Green Suppliers Network. Our colleagues here in the Office of Pollution Prevention and Toxics helped stand up, and then took a step back and let it form on its own, and it's grown on its own as a suppliers partnership for the environment, which is a partnership to promote sustainability in auto manufacturing. Last month I was at their quarterly meeting in Knoxville, Tennessee, to talk about green chemistry, and it was fascinating to hear them from the original equipment manufacturers, the OEMs, through their Tier 1 suppliers, through their Tier 3 and 4 suppliers that manufacture the components of the parts that the Tier 1 manufacturers sell to the original equipment manufacturers to install in the vehicles, how there is great interest in green chemistry and green engineering within their supply chain, and how to send that, how to articulate the demand, the requirement for performance characteristics, document the environmental performance characteristics from those Tier 3 and 4 suppliers all the way up to the original equipment manufacturers is the business case that is either going to make or break those opportunities within this huge supply chain, U.S. manufacturing. So I think that as we think about how do we tell the story about the environmental and economic opportunities associated with green chemistry in the auto supply sector, this provides, that's a venue for that, but that's also a template for working with other sectors and other industries to amplify and leverage green chemistry. So I'm just going to, my second to last slide talks a little about capital formation. Financing is always an issue for technology-led entrepreneurs, and green chemistry is no different. But one of the things that we're seeing more and more of is sovereign investment funds that states develop to support and the entrepreneurs and fund provide angel or seed capital to entrepreneurs in their particular states. And we're seeing more and more an interest in supporting companies that are providing economic opportunity, but are also providing environmental benefits through their goods and services, but also in their locality. We're seeing more interest through institutional investors, public investment through things like pension funds for government workers, through you're seeing endowments at particular kinds of universities, and an increasing interest in what's called impact investing. The White House has a whole initiative and is trying to identify areas where people can, or entities can invest in companies doing meritorious, socially beneficial things, and has beneficial impacts. And green chemistry is an area we've had some conversations with the folks at the White House around that set of opportunities, and there's a growing interest in that. Private equity, venture capital, angel investors, they're as the sheen maybe goes off of some of the clean energy investments, and that's not to kind of discount the importance of clean energy, but I think what we're seeing is a interest in diversification of clean technology portfolios, and green chemistry and materials management seems to be the beneficiary of some of that drive for diversification. And I mentioned leveraged asset conversion, waste to energy or waste to asset, and certainly in the through some of our brownfields and other programs, we're seeing increased opportunities for investing in asset conversion, which provides, in some cases, a venue for the deployment of green chemistry. So with that very kind of rapid jog through the landscape that I and my staff and my colleagues here are working on to try to expand the playing field for green chemistry, I wanted to throw out some of these, some of the overall philosophy and approach to amplifying and leveraging chemistry, identify some of the ways that we're expanding the playing field, and identify just a few illustrative examples of the kind of partners and partnerships that we're working with, and we'd love to hear more. We have been open for business, we continue to be open for business, and would like to expand the engagement with our public and private partners throughout the country to help bring the imperative of green chemistry into the marketplace and make the difference that we intend to make. So I thank you for your time and attention. I look forward to some questions and answers. And my last slide gives my personal contact information and the websites that are associated with programs that we run in my division in EPA. So thank you very much, and I'll look forward to some questions and answers.
Thank you so much, David. That was great. So we do have a question to start out with, and I will read it to you. It says the DFE program does a good job at evaluating chemicals used in products. When a chemical does not meet the criteria, DFE has not been very good at identifying acceptable replacements. This causes significant problems for companies trying to do the right thing. How can DFE work with partners better to identify alternatives or recognize better chemistries are not available and the chemical could be used until a functional replacement is identified?
Okay. Excellent question. Actually, I should say set of questions there. First of all, if you're not aware, on the Design for the Environment website, just at the end of September, we stood up a website that lists all the I should say not all of them, the vast majority of the chemicals that were evaluated in the Design for the Environment Safer Product Labeling program according to functional class that meet our requirements. So you can go onto our website now, and this is the first time we've published this list, is that for, say, constituent chemicals like surfactants or chelating agents, you can go and look at all the different chemicals that have passed the Design for the Environment screen for a safer product labeling program. And if you're looking for alternatives, while this may not be the entire universe, it provides some insight into what some other ingredients that have passed our hazard screening program, might be an option for those companies. Now, we don't provide, beyond identifying the functional class, the specific performance characteristics that a manufacturer formulator may be looking for. But again, it's a resource to start looking at some of those things. There may be for particular products and particular chemicals that are providing some kind of a functional performance that is not meeting hazard our hazard standards and criteria. So a couple of things that is one of our third-party reviewers for that we use in our Safer Product Labeling program, NSF, and Talk Services. Those are our two third-party reviewers. All provide consulting services to companies to identify safer constituents or constituent chemicals if the chemicals were submitted don't meet our criteria. There may be cases where there are chemicals that are best in class that still present some challenges within an acceptable kind of what I consider kind of range of hazard profile. Some people call best in class. We do include some of those, and we're developing partnerships in particular functional areas for chemicals where we're identifying those best in class and using that as the kind of the level of criteria that we can meet. And we've got some of those partnerships listed on our Design for the Environment website. And there may be certain cases where the chemical constituent simply isn't able to meet our hazard criteria, and that's an opportunity where we would like to engage with manufacturing businesses to identify, either through challenge prizes, through R&D, through our small business innovation research programs, our whole suite of assets, ways to help develop the innovations around those chemistries that will allow the products and either chemical products or formulated products to meet our hazard criteria. And that's kind of the innovation challenge area where we're also engaging on. So there's a lot there, good question or good questions. And if you'd like to talk, whoever submitted the question, if you'd like to talk more about it, please get in touch with me.
Thank you. Our next question is, partners aside, what kind of staff do you have working on these projects? How many people are involved roughly?
Okay. Well, in my division, in our Design for the Environment program, we have 10 people that are in our Design for the Environment program in both the Alternatives Assessment and the Safer Product Labeling program. In our Industrial Chemistry branch, that is the home of the Presidential Green Chemistry Challenge Awards, we have 3 people that spend a good portion of their time on the Presidential Green Chemistry Challenge Awards, but we also have a couple of AAAS fellows, American Association for the Advancement of Science, fellows that are working with us on various aspects of green chemistry, and we've got folks in our regional offices, and I haven't done a specific count across all our 10 regional offices of which of those staff are working on green chemistry, but I've been visiting them, and before too long I'll know exactly how many we've got in our 10 regional offices and our labs that are working on it. But I would say folks that are dedicated to green chemistry and green innovation are, in EPA are somewhere between a couple and 3 dozen folks at EPA that are working on it. Some of them, many of them full-time, but some of them part-time as part of their work portfolio.
We have time for a few more questions. I don't see anything up on the board, but I urge you to take advantage of this opportunity to let us know, to ask your questions of David. And in the meantime, I just want to remind you about, on the screen, there's an announcement for the Catching the Wave conference, and I just wanted to remind everybody that registration is still available and that David will be there in person. So you will have an opportunity to talk with him directly and explore some of these questions in greater detail if you're interested. And we'll also be having a breakout session which will be discussing different tools and a number of different perspectives on how to support the business case for green chemistry and green engineering. I think that we're out of questions, but that's okay because we're pretty much out of time also. I want to thank you again, David, for this really terrific presentation. I think it's so important that people know that there's a lot going on at EPA, and there are a lot of resources available for companies and groups that really want to get into green chemistry and explore it further and see what kind of economic benefit and advantages they can achieve by integrating that green chemistry into their existing processes or product chains, supply chains. So thank you again. This will be posted up on the website. You have them on your screen in front of you. The GLGC website is currently down, but we hope to see it back up very soon. But you also can access this through the Michigan Green Chemistry Clearinghouse website, which is also there. Remember to join us again next month on Tuesday, not Wednesday, but Tuesday, December 4th for Lana Pollock. And thanks again to everybody for joining our call today.